I offer these words in the name of one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. It was a great joy and privilege to take part in Jeff Stevenson's ordination yesterday at Epiphany Church in Herndon. Jeff was one of 12 men and women ordained. The church was packed, and all sorts of family members showed up to wish the best and pray for those who were being ordained. Over the years, whenever I've gone to receptions following a church service, you can generally tell who are the family members who haven't seen someone in years, and you get a sense for those who aren't comfortable in a church in the first place. And that was the case yesterday. Looking at young boys who were wearing jackets and ties, and you could tell they did not want to be wearing a jacket, tie, but some parent told them they had to go to church, because we all have to look a certain way when we go to church, right? I happen to think about my own ordination to the priesthood when my mother and brothers and sisters came. Now, some of my siblings who I deeply love really don't go to church on a regular basis. So they too sort of looked nervous and out of place in a church. But I wondered for my family, what is going through their mind? They're watching this ordination. They are coming up for communion. And in the case with my family, they're not used to having Eucharist every Sunday. They're not used to their ministers dressed exactly like I am. So what in the world is going on here? What do you make of all of this Jesus talk? What do you make of that? Quite often, we're not sure what to make of Jesus, are we? Truth be told, Jesus often said some things that rubs us the wrong way, because it doesn't neatly fit into the way we perceive and look at the world, or maybe even at ourselves. A lot of people came to Jesus, a lot of people. And most of them didn't have on their Sunday best. In fact, they were their Monday worst. They came to Jesus with great need. And they came to Jesus because they knew they had a need. This crowd's coming to Jesus, and don't you like how the gospel writers sometimes write? There were so many people that Jesus and his disciples couldn't even have lunch. Someone comes into that lunch and says, Jesus, by the way, your mother and your brothers are looking for you. Do you want us to show them in? And Jesus asked, who is my mother? Who is my brother? We may have gone out of our way to open up an extra place setting for our family members, for our mother. But Jesus asked this very odd question. Isn't it odd? Jesus is rebuffing his own family members, his own mother. Now, I knew better at my ordination to not rebuff my mother. We're not sure what to make of Jesus from time to time. Crazy people, absolutely crazy people, were going out of their way to find Jesus. At Jeff and Stephen's graduation just a few weeks ago, had the pleasure to hear Barbara Brown Taylor preach their graduation sermon. Barbara Brown Taylor is a well-known writer, Episcopal priest, a wonderful preacher. In these words to that graduating class, these words I paid attention to. She said, "You all going out into the church are doing this for low pay, high risk, with the chance that you may do just a little good along the way. This is your invitation to your vocation and your invitation to serve Christ's church. Low pay, high risk, with doing a little good along the way." When I was a seminarian, 27 years ago. 27 years ago, I remember that first semester. I was preaching the weekend before Thanksgiving. And the only part of my sermon that I can remember is I mentioned how much I look forward to going home to celebrate Thanksgiving with my family. Following the service, as I was standing in the receiving line, where many people offer their critique of the sermon, I never will forget these words. 27 years later, a young woman stopped me and said, "Tim, I'm glad you're able to go home this week. Please know and remember that for some of us, going home is not good and not much fun. I hope you remember that in your ministry. I've not forgotten." Mr. Frost is the one who said to us that home is the place that when you go there, they have to take you in. Out of all due respect to Mr. Frost, no, they don't. Or they may physically let you in, but mentally, emotionally, they may not open themselves up to your presence. And vice versa, by the way. Jesus knew this, I think, quite well. On one occasion, Jesus said, "It's very difficult for prophets to go home." A modern translation would be, "It's very difficult for preachers to go home." Because when you go home and you're dressed like this, standing behind a pulpit, those folks in the congregation knew you when. They knew you when you probably didn't act like, talk like, much like any preacher or priest. And they know you. It's difficult for a preacher to go home. to go to people who know them intimately, all their foibles, inconsistencies, mistakes. Jesus was onto something. And here he is intentionally surrounded by crazy people, which is good news for us in the church. Who is my mother and my brother and my sisters? And Jesus looks around and said, these are my brothers and sisters. What do you do with that when you talk about family values? We hear people clamor a lot about family values, do we not? And here it's as if Jesus was turning his back on one of the great commandments, to honor your mother. Home is the place, when you go there, they have to take you in. No, they don't. Church is a place that when you go there, you are taken in. When we may feel like our Monday worst, when we become sick and are given a diagnosis we don't want to hear, when we're particularly embarrassed about something going on in our life, when we feel that we can't quite measure up to those who are sitting around us or next to us, in all of those life moments when we are in the greatest need, that's a great place to be. It's called church. That first semester I went home, I realized why people wanted to see me back at Thanksgiving, because no one would start eating till I said the blessing. It's not changed in nearly 30 years. Church folk don't know how to start eating without someone in a collar saying the blessing. In just a moment, I will have the great privilege to bless another meal that we will share. And every time I offer this Eucharistic prayer to God, it feels like the very first time I am saying these words. Church, your St. Andrew's home, this family, is a place that when you go there, when you come here, you are taken in. Jesus sat at a table looking around at a whole bunch of crazy people. I, for one, am very glad he did. Thanks be to God.